We need the elevator music, the hold elevator music.
We'll be starting the webinar in just a minute if you are signing on. And at any point during the webinar, please feel free to pop into the chat or in the Q&A and ask questions. And we will work on answering those at the end of the webinar after our panel discussion. Okay, we're about a minute past our start time, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Navigating Your Nursing Career with Incredible Health. Today, we're going to be discussing the pros and cons of getting an MSN and explore the personal careers of nurses with different educational backgrounds. Joining us in today's panel, we have Chelsea Jeffrey, RN, and Ashley Ishkola, RN of Incredible Health. Both work with nurses every day to find their dream job. I am your host of the webinar, Emma Geiser. I'm the founder of Nurse Burn, and I am also a nurse content consultant for Incredible Health. I personally do not have a master's. At one point in time, I did consider it. I am actually a second degree nurse. I received my BSN through an accelerated program, and I personally was looking at potentially pursuing a CRNA at some point before I took a big turn to what I'm doing now. I would like to open the floor up to our panelist, Chelsea, to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Yes, so my name is Chelsea. I'm a registered nurse. I, like Emma, am also a second degree nurse. My first degree is actually in hospitality and tourism management, which sort of does lend itself well to nursing in many respects. I decided after about 10 years of working in the ski industry to return to school to become a nurse. And I obtained my associate's degree in nursing. From there, I worked at the bedside for a couple of years in progressive care and urgent care. And about a year ago, I discovered Incredible Health, and that's where I'm working now.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us. Ashley, would you mind throwing your hat in the ring, telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do here?
Hi, I'm Ashley, and I'm a sourcing specialist with Incredible Health. And I'm the first step in the interview process once candidates accept an interview request from an employer. And just like Emma and Chelsea, nursing is a second career path for me. After obtaining my degree in chemistry several years ago, I dabbled in chemistry for a little while and then moved into customer service and just realized that that wasn't a good fit for me and I needed to be in healthcare. And then I decided that nursing was probably going to be my best path. And I went through a fast track program to obtain my BSN as well. And then I practiced in the operating room for 5 years until I took a huge pivot, just like Emma, and landed at Incredible Health about a year ago.
Awesome. Thank you. Just a quick reminder, if you're just popping on a few minutes after the start time and joining us, please feel free to use the Q&A box and the chat to ask questions that we'll be able to address after our panel discussion. So on this panel, we'll be discussing what's more important, education or experience. What do typical career paths look like with and without an MSN or an advanced degree in nursing? What should you look for in a hospital when considering further education? We'll discuss these topics and more. Feel free to drop questions, like I just said, in that Q&A and chat box, and we'll jump into those at the end. So let's get started. I'm going to throw this first question to Ashley. Why should nurses consider getting an MSN?
Well, I have noticed throughout my career as a nurse is that there is a big push to put letters behind your name. without even considering the cost that it's going to take to get there, or what you have to do to get there, and the end of the road once you get there, what's it going to get for you. And you need to take a step back and sit back and analyze, where do I want to go with my career? What do I need to get there? Don't get a master's in nursing just to get a master's in nursing. Consider your career path and what your end game is going to be. So you have to look at the different options. So let's say that you have a BSN and you're thinking about getting a master's. Consider what you can do with the BSN. You could, just for a few examples, you could be a staff nurse at the bedside. You could move up into a nurse coordinator position on your unit. You could be an assistant manager on the unit, or you could also transition into case management, where you walk away from the bedside, but you're still in the hospital setting, still taking care of patients, just more hands-off position. Now, if you want to move up the clinical ladder and up into higher management, then you can consider your master's. Or if you want to maybe move into advanced practice, like a nurse practitioner, you're going to have to go get your master's. That'll get you up to be a unit manager. Or if you want to go into the nursing informatics route, you would have to get a master's specifically in nursing informatics, but you can transition into that role away from the bedside. Or you could be a nurse educator. I mean, the possibilities can be endless.
Really good points, especially with student loan repayment starting up. We've lived in a little bit of a fog for a little bit here, and now we're having to consider that cost again.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. So I'm going to move on to Chelsea. What are your thoughts on getting an MSN? Can you still advance your career without one?
Absolutely. I think one of the best things about nursing, and one of the reasons why I became interested in becoming a nurse, is because the possibilities are sort of endless. There's lots of different avenues that you can take. And not all of them involve getting your BSN. I think what Ashley said really is so important. And I think that one of the biggest keys is trying to figure out what type of nurse you want to be and in what type of specialty you'd like to be working. So first of all, really determining what your interests are and then aligning those interests with your career path, I think is just paramount. The way Probably there's a few different ways I think you can do that. So really just sort of do some introspection and nail down what your goals are when it comes to nursing. And from there, you could do some research to figure out what you need to do to get there. As Ashley mentioned, in many cases, your goal might be to be a staff RN for the next foreseeable future. And if that's the case, pursuing an MSN right away maybe doesn't make the most sense. I think conducting some research, whether that's talking to your nurse colleagues, professors, people that you trust that maybe are in a career that you're looking to getting into, I think that's probably the best way to really figure out what type of degree you're going to need to achieve those goals.
Really resonates with me, especially taking a little bit of time to figure out what you're truly interested in. Because I know if I've seen it, you two have also the posts where people either say it's absolutely necessary for what they do, and then the other side that are saying it was not worth it. I don't know why I took out these loans to get my MSN. Have either of you considered personally getting one?
I have actually, when I decided to go back to school, I was considering becoming a midwife. So to do that, really, I discovered that obtaining your RN was really necessary before pursuing a CNM or a certified nurse midwife. So, which is an advanced practice degree and does require an MSN. So I was kind of on the track of doing that. And then when I got my first job out of nursing school, I was in progressive care and telemetry. And I just really kind of fell in love with that. And then my views sort of changed, and I decided that maybe I didn't want to be a nurse midwife anymore. So again, I think that's one of the beauties of nursing is you can kind of make those decisions along the way if you need to. And at that point, I diverted, and I'm happy that I did. So yeah, I think ultimately it is important to know what you'd like to do. And I think that that's great if you're going to pursue an MSN and necessary. But in my case, I just decided that ultimately I didn't need to do that route.
So true. Keeping an open mind as you're moving through your career and choosing those forks in the road. How about you, Ashley?
Well, when I first got out of school, that was going to be an end goal for me. I was going to become a nurse practitioner, and my path has always been surgery. That's why I became a nurse. I always wanted to work in the operating room, but I wanted to advance up and up and up in the operating room. But as I began to see the inner workings of the operating room, and I saw that the nurse practitioners did not have a good work life balance in the operating room, I realized quickly that that probably wasn't going to be the best path for me because I am a mother of two littles and my family is very important to me. So I wanted to have a better work life balance, and staying as a staff nurse in the operating room at that time was the best work life balance fit for me. And now I've done this pivot to where I work at home now, and that's even better. So I didn't have to get my master's to have the best work life balance that I've ever had.
I just realized when you mentioned NPs in the OR that I haven't shared my personal family history, but my mom went back to NP school when I was in high school, and she worked in the OR and did really cool things. But it became apparent very quickly in nursing that she had a very niche, really cool job
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
definitely.
not something that was easy to get in. She like right place, right time, new people. And I was like, you are the definition of networking to an awesome first assist job. But
Oh,
I
yeah,
was like,
it's
I don't know
it's
how I'm ever
great.
going to get there.
It's a really cool job, but from what I saw, oh my goodness, they were married to their job. So I
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. So we went from mother NP. My sister left after a semester of NP school. And then I was like, I guess I'll just see what happens out here before I jump in. Let's see here. So, based on your experience working with nurses at Incredible Health, helping them advance in their careers, what times have you seen that it's advantageous to have an MSN, like when you're applying for a new role? Who wants them?
Yeah, so I think what's important to know here is that many positions do require an MSN. So if your plan is to get into certain specialties, you really do need to have them to be considered for those positions. So some examples would be leadership, um, nurse practitioners, of course, and educators. A lot of the employers would be looking for an MSN in those situations. So I would say not only advantageous to have them, but really required.
Perfect. And then, Ashley, is education more important than experience? What are your thoughts?
Actually, I believe that education is the most important piece because when candidates come to me and I review their profiles and I figure out if I want to interview them or not for a position, education is the most important piece because if you don't have that education, I'm not even going to consider you for the role because you have to have a certain degree for certain roles. And remember that whenever you are interviewing for a position, let's say it's a position where a master's is preferred but not required, it's kind of vague in the job listing. Remember that there will most likely be other candidates vying for that job who already have their master's in nursing, and having your education credentials already in place is the best plan because if you are going up against somebody else that already has the credentials, they're probably going to get the position over you. And then also consider that if you already have your credentials in place, education plus experience is even better. So if you have the masters and the and the experience, and you're going up against a candidate, let's say that's just getting their masters now, or they only have their masters, you're going to be gold.
So true. And I know we chatted a little bit off screen about this, but sometimes as an internal candidate, it can look a little bit different because if you're already in a leadership role and you're moving up, they might be willing to work with you and have you on like a contract to finish education. But if you're coming in from the outside, it's best to have everything buttoned up as best as possible on that application.
Absolutely.
Let's see here. So I'm gonna ask you guys for a tip. So, what's the one tip you have for nurses that are looking to advance their career? We'll go Chelsea first.
Sure. So I think the best thing you can do is really take advantage of what your current workplace is willing to offer you. So many hospitals and facilities offer their nurses opportunities to gain additional certifications. And I think that's a big one. So, and what I really mean by that is if you're a critical care nurse and you're newly a critical care nurse, your facility might offer you an opportunity to pursue a CCRN, which is just a critical care certification. And and there's others too. TNCC is another certification that a lot of facilities are willing to help their nurses get. So it's beneficial if you can take advantage of those. Oftentimes it's provided by the facility and it's free or low cost. And so what happens then is now, okay, you're a critical care nurse, going back to that example. Let's say you obtain your CCRN, you're now more desirable really for any employer. And in the end, when you become more specialized and more desirable to an employer, more comfortable in your practice, you have a higher potential for salary. So I think really obtaining certifications when you are given the opportunity to do that is just huge.
Definitely agree. How about Ashley? Do you have a tip?
Chelsea, those are really great tips. Absolutely.
You're
And
like, you stole
also,
mine?
no, just to like piggyback off of it, that's really important to do that because you look amazing when you've got those letters behind your name for the certifications. And also, here's something to think to maybe put a twist on it. If you're not ready to obtain your master's just yet, find your clinical specialty that fits you the best, that you feel most passionate about, and stay there and build your experience there. Because once you've got that experience under your belt, you're going to look better than somebody who doesn't have the experience to move up to a higher level, like a nurse coordinator or assistant manager that you can do with the BSN. But when you've got the experience on the unit, you're going to look so much better than somebody coming from another unit that wants the assistant manager position. Let's say you're in the ED and you've been there for 7 years and you want to move up to a coordinator. Somebody coming from med surg wants to come and get the coordinator position too. Well, guess what? You look better. You've got the experience. You're going to move up first.
Perfect. So when we're looking at nurses who are wanting to prioritize moving forward with education, what are your tips for finding an ideal role when your end goal is pursuing higher ed?
Well, when you're looking for employment at a new hospital, do a deep dig and do your research and look for hospitals that'll help fund your education, because there are some hospitals out there that may supplement to your tuition, but keep in mind if they do supplement your tuition, they might want you to return that favor with years of service. So it's not a, oh, thanks for paying for my education, I'm done now. They'll hold you accountable for it, but think about that money that didn't come out of your pocket. So you return your years of service, do what you need to do, and then if you need to move on, you can. There are also programs at some hospitals where they have leadership programs that you can go through where they teach you how to move up into leadership roles and they groom you for those positions. So you could also talk to the hiring manager about that, just put in a little tidbit that, hey, I would like to move into leadership eventually. That's one of my 5-year goal plans. And then ask if they have any programs like that that can help you move up.
So true. I was just thinking about how I went through a frontline leadership project program and then had the opportunity, if I wanted to apply for a sponsored MSN MBA through my unit, which would have been cool if I was staying there. Let's see, Chelsea, anything to add to this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ashley really hit the nail on the head there. So, especially for new graduates, when you're applying to different facilities and you're taking interviews with different hospitals, I think it's important to really hone in on this during your interview. Remember that the interview process really isn't just for the employer to get to know you, it's also for you to get to know the employer. So I think it's important to take advantage of that and figure out what you need to do to grow with that facility. If your end goal, let's say, let's use the new grad example. Let's say you're a new graduate with your associates or your bachelor's, and you know that you want to pursue an MSN, but you'd really like to start working. I think that it would be great to ask, okay, what do I have to do? What does the path look like at this hospital if I decide to pursue an MSN? Will they offer tuition assistance, like Ashley said, or can they accommodate maybe a schedule change if you decide that you need to maybe drop some hours to accommodate school? So I think that those would be the questions to sort of ask during that very important interview process.
Really good points. So both of you work at Incredible Health helping nurses find positions. What are ways that Incredible Health helps them find these hospitals?
Yeah, so since we were just talking about interviews, we definitely help with that. So I'm actually a nurse screener. I'm kind of the first step in the process with Incredible Health. So after you create a profile with Incredible Health, you'd be speaking with a member of our team. And our initial goal is to obtain your preferences so that we can really hone in on what you're looking for in your next permanent position. It really just consists of a brief phone call. And from there, we'll go ahead and update everything, making sure that we have everything kind of customized to you. And really, what the real benefit is that if you are looking to apply for many different positions and what you're looking for, you don't have to do all the legwork. So we get to help you with that and just using our platform to really begin that job search to prevent you from having to spend your time filling out applications. So that's one of the major benefits with using Incredible Health.
And then after you work with Chelsea, you come to people like me. So I start looking for candidates that Chelsea has talked to and figure out if they're a good fit for the hospitals that I represent. And then I will interview you and then move you on to the hiring manager at the hospitals that I represent. And the beautiful thing is, all you have to do is put in your preferences, talk to Chelsea, say, this is what I want. And then you have all these hospitals in your area vying for your attention and wanting to talk to you. You didn't have to apply at 5 different hospitals and do the application process 5 different times. All you have to do is come to Incredible Health and we do all the legwork for you.
I like the little 1-2 we have going on here. And speaking of this, since you are then screening to interview these nurses, obviously you're seeing their resumes. What are some of your favorite things to see on a nursing resume?
Oh, I could talk all day about this. I've seen really good ones and I've seen really bad ones and I've seen everything in between. I would say the most important thing is that you make your resume easy to read because recruiters are going to spend maybe 20 seconds looking at your resume. And it needs to be super easy to read. It needs to be in chronological order to begin with. So I want to see your most recent experience at the top, and then going down, it needs to be in order from most recent to latest experience. And then when you're talking about where you've worked, make it short and sweet. We don't need paragraphs because we're not going to read those paragraphs. We just want a quick blurb on what you've done. So with each job that you post on your resume, just post the hospital you worked at, what unit you worked on, how long you worked there. And if you have any great achievements that you've done well on that unit, make it a bullet point. Otherwise, just say registered nurse, telemetry unit, Methodist Hospital, and the date that you worked there. Because if you just say registered nurse, I don't really know what you did. I don't know what unit you worked on. And I need to know what unit you worked on so that I can figure out your years of experience and see if you qualify exactly for the position that you want. So just make it short and sweet. No paragraphs, please.
So true. We like a good storytelling in easy to digest format on a resume. Let's see here. So, out of the nurses you've screened, what are the most popular positions you have seen?
So primarily staff positions of any type of specialty. Those that require an MSN or that are MSN related positions would be leadership and advanced practice. So as we already sort of talked about, to practice as a nurse practitioner, you do need to have an MSN. And while not all leadership positions require an MSN, I would say a good chunk of them do. And so if you don't have one yet, it's important to indicate that you're willing to go get your MSN in those situations, or that you're in process of obtaining an MSN. But in general, I would say of all the different types of positions that I screen, it would be primarily staff nurses on our platform. And then follow up would be leadership, advanced practice, and educator nurses for MSN.
You mentioned something interesting in there, and I'm curious, how would you show your intention that you want to advance and get your MSN?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the time people are very interested in getting a job in their preferred specialty. So, for example, the one that comes to mind is education. There's a lot of folks out there that might have a great deal of experience as educators, whether that's in the classroom or in the hospital setting, but they don't have their MSN. I think in that situation, it's important to let the employer know, both on your resume and if you do get the interview, in the interview as well, that you are in process of getting it. Maybe you're currently enrolled in a program, or you have plans in the very near future to do that. So by indicating that to them, it's sort of like in good faith that you're going to get that degree that is likely needed for that role.
Yeah, and that looks good too, because whenever you tell them that, they're like, oh, this person has goals. It makes you look better than someone that just comes in and just sits there and says, I just want a job. Because I promise you, I talk to people like that all day, and I'm like, what? You don't really, you don't really seem like you want to be here. But when you do what Chelsea said, it shows that you really care. You want to contribute. You want to be a part of this unit, and you want to grow within it. And that's huge.
Perfect. Let me see here. So in the last few minutes of our panel discussion, we have some Q&As. So I want to, let me see which one I want to ask first. So this is a big one because compensation is really important in nursing. But what's the difference in salary for candidates that you see that might have an MSN versus ADN BSN?
Well, I've seen in the past, just looking at the difference between, I'd say, a staff nurse at the bedside versus the unit manager on the same unit, it can be upwards of maybe $13 to $15 a difference for an hour. I can't talk. 15 to
We've been on for a
$13
while.
difference for an hour per hour. But
Perfect. Okay, so we've got a couple in the Q&A, and then I have one more from another source, so I'm going to start with that one. What we've been talking about MSN, and if it's worth it, the advanced past bachelor's. What are your thoughts on starting with an ADN in your process versus just going for the BSN?
well, it all depends on how long you want to spend in it, and what you already have under your belt, and how much time you have to commit. Because if you're just starting off and it's your first degree, maybe an ADN is going to be your best, because it's going to be cheaper and you'll be done within 2 years and you'll be set to go. But like me, I already had another degree. So it wouldn't have worked for me to get my ADN, because I've already have a 4 year degree. Then I moved to 2 more years with an ADN. And if I want to move it to a BSN, that's 2 more years. But I found a fast track program that I finished in 18 months, and I piggybacked off my previous degree, and then got my BSN in 18 months. So it just all depends on, what you have in your back pocket to work with.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I
Yeah, I
agree.
think that's, oh, go ahead. I want you
I
to
was just going to
answer.
say, I agree with that. I have So around where I was living at the time, we didn't have like a fast track degree, that didn't exist. So my real option to kind of get my foot in the door was an associate's, unless I wanted to take 4 more years and obtain a bachelor's. And at the time, I kind of just wanted to get started because I was getting started as a nurse later in life. Well, not that much later in life, but several years. Um, so it was important for me to get started working. And I knew that many of the hospitals in my area would assist with a BSN. I believe New York, which is where I obtained my degree, they have this thing called BSN in 10. And essentially, they do require, the goal is for nurses to have a BSN within 10 years of getting their associates. So a lot of the hospitals are on board with trying to help with that. So for me, I think, like Ashley said, it's important to really evaluate what you already have and what's important to you, and kind of going back to those goals when deciding on that.
Exactly. And once again, can't stress enough that student loan repayments are coming back into the picture. So having to factor that in, how much things cost. All right. So let's jump over to the Q&A from our guests here. So we're going to go with the first question. Can having your MSN and getting hired at the VA or other government or city jobs help you get a higher starting pay and tier?
Absolutely. Whenever you go into a government position, they always take your education into account, and they do pay you more for it.
Yeah, that GS level, it's real confusing to look at, but especially like if you're looking at USA jobs.
Oh yeah, but you go to a higher tier with higher education, definitely.
Yeah. All right, and it looks like we're rounding out with our last Q&A question. So make sure to pop yours in if you have something really fast. Any thoughts on an advanced degree for nurses in clinical research?
Yeah, so I think clinical research is one of those areas that is sort of unfamiliar to many nurses. I know, at least from the nurses that we talk to on our platform, many of them do not have an MSN for research. I do not believe it's required for most positions. In that case, I think it's really about the experience that you may have. If it's something that's really interesting to you, I would encourage you to decide what type of research you're looking to do. I think there's lots of different sort of like subspecialties in research. And I think that once you decide, if you really want to get really niche, there may be positions out there that require an MSN, but in general, a BSN is generally sufficient for those positions.
Absolutely. What
Perfect.
Chelsea said is correct, because when I interview nurses for research positions, they only need a BSN.
Very good to know. Thanks. Yeah, I get a lot of questions about getting into research as well. Ooh, we've got one that came in under the wire. I'm an operating room nurse looking to get a master's in informatics. Can you speak to the difference in an MSN in informatics versus a master's in health informatics? Let's see. I'm not
I
entirely
might
sure on
defer
this
that to
one.
you, actually. Do you know?
Are you gonna reverse Uno me
I
on this
didn't
one?
know that there was a difference.
I
Honestly.
am I have to say that I'm not sure either. If sometimes this has come up too with people that I've spoken with. Different colleges sometimes
Mm,
have weird wording for their degrees. Um,
definitely.
so I think this is definitely going to be one that we're going to research off screen, and we'll make sure to post the answer after we make sure that we know what we're talking about. But thank you for that. All right, so I'm just going to call attention here that this is going to be my bit of an infomercial moment. So this webinar is a preview of what Incredible Health does every day for nurses. You get this level of insight and support and so much more. If you want to activate your job search today, you can call 415-792-4961 to get started. Thank you so much for being here with us. I have really enjoyed this discussion.
Thank you so much. It was so great to be here.
It was fun.